and you invited her for a staycation at the Ritz and then did not propose.
Yeah, I was trying to be the best boyfriend imaginable.
And she was looking for a husband.
She was looking for a husband. And the good news is that just months later, I became that fiance, and today I am that husband, but it was looking real shaky there for a bit.
Hi, I got my nails done. What'd you do that for?
Yep, no idea.
Let's start with Mookie Betts, one of the newest Los Angeles Dodgers. Betts and David Price are going from Boston to the Dodgers in a blockbuster trade that saw, among other things, Jock Peterson go from the Dodgers to the Angels. Betts is one of the best players in baseball. He's a former MVP, but he'll be a free agent in the offseason. He and the Red Sox were far apart in extension talks, so now we'll see if he's the mythical missing piece in L.A. But Pablo, are you surprised the Red Sox punted on such a great player?
I am surprised by this just because it's the sort of trade that curses are made of. The Red Sox should know more than any other team that when you have a guy who's this good, you don't give him away to save money. And Bomani, we don't ask a lot of billionaires on this planet. They get to rule the world, but in sports, all we say is, hey, could you just try to win and keep the homegrown player who has more wins above replacement than Barry Bonds and Willie Mays through age 26? Could you do that for us if you can afford it? And they did it.
Now, I have to be somewhat fair to the Red Sox here. It sounds like they were about $100 million apart in negotiating this deal. That is not a trifle. I understand if they decide they don't want to do that. And Betts has got all the leverage in the world, right? It doesn't help the rest of the owners that Mike Trout probably sold himself short. So they try to come out here with, hey, well, Mike Trout only got this much. And they're like, and game done change. But it has to stink if you're a Red Sox fan, because you would think that we're one of these behemoths that can go spend all this money.
Yes.
And what baseball seems to have is a bunch of teams with a whole lot of money that are less enthusiastic about spending that money than you would expect, except in Los Angeles, where they're like, fine, we got it. You want this, Mookie Betts? Come on down. We can have you here for the team. They are what the Yankees were 20 years ago. It doesn't appear right now on the East Coast there's a team that fits that bill.
And they were what the Red Sox were a couple of years ago. The Red Sox are worth over $3 billion. They have more than tripled in the last 10 years, according to Forbes. This is the team that has all of the resources that New York and LA and Houston and Chicago, the other teams that are in excess of the competitive balance tax, which is really, for all intents and purposes, just a test of whether you're cheap. John W. Henry, the owner of the Red Sox, Bomani, he is now officially a cheapskate. And that's in spite of the fact that he's paying many other players a lot of money. It's just because he could have kept this dude.
I feel like halfway through your sentence, you realize you went too far. Right? I feel like halfway
He's
through,
cheaper than he should be.
Maybe, right? Again, not our money. I never quite know what to do with this when I'm supposed to tell people how much of the money they're supposed to spend. I think the other part, though, we can't forget is this team's probably not going to be good this year. They have gone through an amazing level of turmoil with that whole World Series winning manager getting tossed overboard because of the cheating scandal. This year in Boston is the kind of one you write a book about, but it ain't a happy one unless you're a Yankees fan.
Way to get that story out of the news cycle, by the way. But up next are the Rockets, who made the biggest splash in an enormous 4-team, 12-player trade last night. Atlanta got Houston center Clint Capela, who'd been averaging 14 and 14, pretty good. And Minnesota sent Houston Robert Covington, who is the 3-and-D wing the Rockets apparently coveted. All of which is to say that the Rockets are probably going to start the 6'5" P.J. Tucker at center in the middle of the playoff chase. So, Bomani, how sure are you that Houston just got better?
Oh, I'm not sure of that at all. I'm just not at a place where I'm futuristic and forward-thinking enough to be like, we don't need no tall people on our basketball team, and I'm going to ride this out. The Warriors didn't even go with that premise, not for no 48 minutes a game. So Covington will help because Covington is a good defender. Covington will help in theory because he is a good three-point shooter. However, when this gets later in the year and you get to the postseason, we sat there at that Sixers game with that Sixers fan properly identifying the weaknesses in Robert Covington and his willingness to take some of these shots at different points. But I feel like what we got here with the Rockets is a whole lot of people who know they won't be around next year. Mike D'Antoni, probably not going to be around next year. Daryl Morey, we don't like to talk about it so much, probably not going to be around next year if this is the team that's a 5 seed in the West. And so they figure they're going to make the move that they need to make. And if they're going to lose, they're going to do it their own way, which is Mike D'Antoni saying, bring on the imps.
Yes, bring small ball back. weaponize it, maximize it, do the thing where PJ Tucker, according to what I looked up, is in fact the shortest starting center in NBA history, breaking the record, by the way, set by Chuck Hayes for the Houston Rockets when Yao Ming got hurt. And there's an interesting similarity between Chuck Hayes and PJ Tucker in this circumstance, actually, because they are both short. PJ Tucker, 6'5", Chuck Hayes, 6'6". But the wingspan, that might be the secret to this market inefficiency, Bomani. If there is a plan that the Rockets have right now, it's the fact that PJ Tucker has a 7-foot wingspan. So, does that enable them to do some things that other teams cannot and do not do? That's the hope. Do something different because Clint Capela.
Do you believe what you are saying?
I believe.
Do you believe what you are saying? I went through all those words just to tell me PJ Tucker has long arms, and they're hoping that means he's not actually 6'5".
He is somebody who can guard men who are way taller than him. Do I believe in this plan working? I think it's better to try something different than it is to do the same thing.
Do you believe that the plan is going to work?
No. No, probably not.
Somebody hit the bell. I need a bell.
It's a 5 seed, and they have a glimmer of hope because insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And they're doing something different.
We'll move to Zion Williamson, who looked like a rookie for the first time this season in the Pelicans' 120-108 loss to the Bucks. Williamson was focused on getting shots in a way we haven't seen, but his 20 points came on 5 for 19 shooting from the floor. His physicality was met by multiple Bucks, including a couple of Lopez's and one freaky Greeky. Oh, and Giannis put up 34-7 and 6 in 33 minutes. Pablo, what do you think of Zion's performance against the best team in the NBA?
It took the best defense, not just the best team in the NBA, and yes, 14 foot of Lopez, to tell us that this guy has a ceiling. We now have seen the Zion Williamson ceiling, and it involves contesting, I believe, 13 of the 15 shots that he took in that area. It involves a lot of long defenders who can bother a guy who is otherwise very unbothered. But for me, if this is what it takes, the good news is not a lot of teams have what the Bucks threw at them.
Yeah, but I think there's some things to note in this. First of all, this is probably the first time ever that Zion Williamson has been on a court with anybody half as strong as him, except maybe potentially stronger. Never happened to him before. There's never been a time where that many dudes could go up to the rim with him, and I think that might be the first time anybody has gone to the rim with him in years, because those poor kids in high school would have got yammed on. So I noticed when he's going up to the rim on these plays, you see he's not really trying to go through the contact. Yep. He's trying to avoid it. The body control is incredible, but what he's going to have to figure out is the limits of his powers. And he's going to have to figure out that his powers might be stronger than he thinks he is, because you're not just going to go up with these dudes and go up like next to him and they're going to fall away. You're going to have to lean into him. You're going to have to throw some elbows. Now, where I thought this was encouraging for them, though, is he shot more than he should have. It definitely seemed like the go-get shots thing went to his, not in his head in a way, but these were not good shots in large measure that he took. But there were points in this game where he looked like Dominique Wilkins. There were points in this game where he looked like Moses Malone going up for the second jump. There are points in the game where you look at him going up and down the court looking like Charles Barkley. Like, what could be was on full display here. What we saw, though, is it's the NBA and everybody's going to look like a rookie sometimes.
Zion Williamson, man, like, do we have the clip of him ripping the ball away from Giannis? Because even in all of the slop that he was sort of working through in the paint, his ability to just take the ball from a guy like that, I mean, that's special, right? We see these singular moments. But to me, it was about what was said after the game when Zion confessed to what you hypothesized. He felt like he was shooting too much. And what happened? Lonzo Ball was out there telling him, no, man, keep shooting. And that is exactly the conversation that this team had last week, because they know for all the stuff that they can accomplish this year, the number one achievement is getting that dude to feel more comfortable on an NBA floor.
Yeah, but keep shooting is too broad, right? There was no real organization as to how it was that he was actually going to keep shooting in this game. And there were points I was looking at it where I'm like, Lonzo, don't shoot so much, right? Like,
Lonzo,
yes. I don't know if it's going to take the All-Star break or whatever it is. That they got some things they're going to have to figure out, because they have a dude that's damn near a 30-point-a-game scorer right now in Brandon Ingram. They have a chance to make the playoffs. I don't think that you can just approach this last part of the season simply as let's figure it out with Zion. They got to figure out all this stuff together, because they got a lot of decisions to make about how they're going to structure this team.
A lot.
All right, coming up next, we got a special guest here. Everybody. Boss Word, come on.
Yes. I am in on this threesome.
First topic. The Bengals. Former Bengals receiver T.J. Houshmandzadeh had this to say about the idea of Cincinnati potentially trading the number one pick. Quote, I have to strongly consider it for the good of the team. Pablo, you in with him on that?
I am in on the consideration, but I am out on the idea that the Bengals need more decisions to make. This is a famously terrible chef, and if I'm forced to hire one of those, I'll give him like a steak, keep it simple, don't mess that up. Like, don't make me a seafood paella. Like, less decisions.
I'm surprised, but you, as a champion of tanking, like the only principle of tanking that I actually find some value in is you get more bites at the apple by having more draft picks. So I would think the analytical mind that you profess that you have would see the value in moving on from this guy he's been great, but he's only been great for 1 year. And even guys who've been great for multiple years in college, they fail in the NFL. You have multiple first-round picks, you're more likely to succeed.
Well, that's the thing. How sure are you about Joe Burrow? Because people I'm talking to who watch more of the film, this isn't quite the slam dunk that the numbers from college necessarily indicate. In large part because, hey, man, them dudes was butt naked open all the time. I don't know how much of that had to do with Joe Burrow. If you're the Bengals, more players, because it's not like they just need one dude. They need a bunch of dudes. So it might be irresponsible not to take a chance to get a bunch of dudes when you have the opportunity.
Next topic, the Jaguars. Jacksonville will play 2 home games in London in 2020, so Dominique, you in on that?
I am actually. Like, I think that the idea of spreading internationally is about making money, but not from that value. From the Jags standpoint, like, they are the London team, and they have ties to London. Maybe they moved to London, and maybe you get comfortable with having some sort of advantage from playing in London consistently. I was born in England, despite I was on a military base, so I'm not actually British, but more games to the UK, go for it. Get that money in ways that don't require the players playing more games, like 17 or 18.
But they need the money in part because they want to like step the stadium situation up. And I gotta say, it's not a very good sign if you gotta go out the country to get the money to build your stadium. Like, you ain't making enough money at your own stadium to build a new stadium. Why are we even talking about giving you another stadium?
Yeah, this feels like a toxic relationship. This notion that I gotta cheat on you to give you what you deserve. There's a $700 million entertainment district they're talking about building, except they need to go elsewhere, which would make me terrified if I'm a Jaguars fan. And by the way, you're born in England? Jaguar? Jaguar? That's the other big obstacle in all of this. They pronounce the same word very different ways.
That's a minor obstacle, but it's 2020. What's wrong with a throuple? Like, just because they're in some relationship that you perceive to be toxic, maybe they might got an open relationship.
Call it a throuple?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Oh.
Schooling you. And now, Austin Rivers. Last night, Rivers accidentally prevented James Harden from a triple-double when he swiped this rebound. Let's watch.
Here we go.
So, Bo, you in on Rivers feeling bad about this?
I am out on Austin Rivers feeling bad about it. In fact, this is a whole new Austin Rivers, because the Austin Rivers we met when he first got to college wouldn't have gave a damn what James Harden thought of this. I actually think the wackest part of this is that anybody knows how many rebounds he has at this point. And I know that they do this, but why are you doing this?
This is Austin Rivers saying the quiet part loud. Don't do this. Don't call attention to how much this needs to be a coordinated effort to get the stat padding for a stat that I will say once again, it's fake. It's only a stat because it sounds cool. None of this actually means anything.
It's a stat when Luka does it.
That is true. You do trumpet it when certain people
so
do
many
it.
of them.
But I mean, it is a stat and it is a thing. This reminds me of essentially the big pizza chicken. Like, James Harden is the big player there, and you are supposed to set him up to succeed that way. I'm not mad at Austin Rivers for doing it, but like, I do understand the sentiment. Like, you got to set your guy up to succeed. He's the only one whose stats will finally matter at the end of his career.
And also, the triple-double is a reflection of a broad set of things that somebody does within a game to reflect your all-around game. Thank you.
Big piece.
Finally, Travis Kelce. After winning the Super Bowl, Kelce decided to do this with the Lombardi Trophy. Let's watch. Pablo, you in on drinking from the Lombardi Trophy?
I have drunk out of so many worse things than that. I've drunk
Like what?
from a shoe. I've drunk from this cup, which, by the way, like, cleaner than anybody here thinks. But to me, this reminds me of like the ice luge I used to partake in occasionally in college, you know? And that would be gross, especially when it's after the lacrosse team goes through it. But nonetheless, it's a thing that happens.
Your college had a lacrosse team?
Oh, yeah.
The ice luge, at least you could argue that the cold would kill whatever germs. It just seems dirty and unnecessary. Like, I've never won a championship, so maybe I've never felt so happy that I could care less about how disgusting this is. But what happened to the good old-fashioned way of getting drunk? You just drink it.
Here's my thing about it, man. This ain't the Stanley Cup. You can't make it into the Stanley Cup. And in fact, given that reference, I would expect this more from Jason Kelsey than I would from your man, Killer Trav, right? Like, once you lean in on this, I'm Killer Trav, drinking off stuff like that, that's in the Jason Kelsey, Killer Jace program. That's not on yours. Killer Jace, actually. We got Pat Mahomes, by the way, at the parade.
Are we sure, by the way, that ice kills all of those bacteria?
There we go. Drinking Coors Light.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, he may be the best quarterback we've ever seen. Can we get him something better than Coors Light?
I'm just telling you right now, from that little town he's from in Texas, he spent a lot of time standing outside in a jacket like that, drinking Coors Light.
I was going to say, though, on a scale of, like, celebrations at a Super Bowl parade, like, or a championship parade, that's like a 2.3 out of 10.
So you're
like,
disappointed?
come on. He's the champion. Go do the thing that Jordan Bell was doing when the Warriors won. Go get your handle from the crowd and go enjoy that.
There's a difference between being Jordan Bell and being Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, you trying to take his
with
money.
that attitude.
Yeah, appreciate Foxworth. Coming up next, your Masai Ujiri lead for the Knicks. Lakers Spurs last night. LeBron James, heat check time.
Yeah. He had 19 points in 3 minutes doing this sort of thing. He had 36, 9, and 7 in a blowout over the Spurs. And this is unfair if he's just going to do this.
He can cancel Christmas if it's going to be that. Although I feel like Lonnie Walker, you should have an advantage. You put your hand up and your hair up, you shouldn't be able to see a damn thing.
Quote, "It's 100% false," said NBA spokesman Mike Bass in response to Mark Stein, writing, quote, "The league office, specifically Commissioner Adam Silver, is pushing Masai Ujiri as the ideal candidate to try to rescue the Knicks," end quote. So, Bo, does that informed speculation lead you to believe that Ujiri to the Knicks is likely or unlikely to happen?
Well, I mean, Silver can't make the dude take this job that we all think is bad. Like, if he's as smart as we believe he is, they're going to have to drop a boatload of money in front of him and everything else to get him to take it. I don't blame Silver for trying to push this, though, right? The league has had this thing that could make it better. The Knicks being halfway decent, and they've been sorry for 20 years. I can't knock the commissioner of a league like this trying to push them to do something smart.
On the one hand, it is a shadowy thing that should worry all sorts of, like, fans and other teams that he is going to meddle like this allegedly. But it is the wise thing to do. The business of basketball right now, the business of the NBA right now is kind of struggling. And the Knicks are this, again, it's this radioactive site because Jim Dolan can't handle the city that he is an owner in. And so the next question, Bomani, logically is, if you gotta try and puppet master the ousting of a GM, you should probably think about getting that owner out of there too.
You're going to buy it from him?
Do something.
What are you hoping for tapes? Like, that's the thing about owning something. It doesn't work that easy.
I am hoping for tapes.
Quote, "I wish the whole thing would change," said Mike Krzyzewski to Yahoo Sports about his vision for college hoops. Pablo, how do you see the state of men's college hoops?
It is not great right now. I have been watching more high school basketball, even if it's mostly Sierra Canyon specifically, than I have been watching Mike Krzyzewski's team or any other team in college basketball. And I think Krzyzewski knows that. He sort of sees the sport as, A, not as relevant right now, and also way behind college football, which is the thing that they would probably measure themselves against.
Dude, the problem is there isn't a single player in college basketball that anybody gives a damn about. There ain't been one player that the people who do this all the time have felt like telling us about. I guess the one was